back to Stanford Medicine, Tools for Healthcare Data Science. This is Tutorial 2, Part 7, and I'm Priya Desai. In this video, we're actually going to explore, the drugs hierarchy, explore the drugs ontology, and see if it works, similar to the way we've learned about concepts and, conditions and the other domains. So the good news is that yes, for the most part, drugs do work just like the conditions did. You have drug concept codes, which would be drugs that come from the source codes. You have the source codes are really varied for drugs. So NDC, that's the National Drug Classification. I think most of you have heard about that. Then there are drug codes like GPI and Multilex, which actually are from the UK. Codes like HCPCS, which mostly contain procedure codes, but may contain some drugs like chemotherapy drugs, and so on. The way you map them to the standard concept is exactly the same. You find, if you know the coding system, the source in which, whatever that drug is called, you look for the concept ID of that drug in the concept relationship table, and then you look for what it maps to find the standard concept. The only way that drugs can be a little bit different is you have a lot of different kinds of drug products or drug classifications. So you have drug products, that's the generic and brand name drugs, so like acetaminophen and Tylenol. You have drugs that can be at the ingredient level. So, for example, we've been talking about, we alluded that the drugs we would look at would be these antithrombotic agents like warfarin. So warfarin is both a brand name drug, but it's also an ingredient. And then drug classes. Drug classes are sort of bigger classification of drugs like antithrombotics and so on. Just like the other, the conditions and diseases, drugs also, for the most part, have a relationship. They are related to the standard drug concept, and then they are part of a hierarchy. So that's the, that's the hierarchical, or that's what you would find in the concept ancestor table. A really useful resource to, to explore drugs is this link that I've put in here. This is the RxNav site, and I don't want to go to the RxNav in a box. So this is the RxNav main website. RxNav is the main vocabulary that is chosen to represent drugs. RxNav includes almost all the drugs that are supported here in the US. There is something called RxNav extension that was created by the OMOP vocabulary team, specifically to be able to include and absorb all the other international drugs that are not part of RxNav. So that's called RxNav extension, and I'll show you that in a minute. But if you want to actually look at RxNav, this is a really nice GUI for you to understand this drug hierarchy. So let's actually just look for, I'm going to just look for warfarin, see what comes up. So you can see I have warfarin as an ingredient. The precise ingredient, you have warfarin potassium and warfarin sodium. These are two brand names for the ingredient warfarin. But as a clinical drug component, you can have warfarin sodium, 0.5 milligram, 1 milligram, 10 milligram. And see, these are all, they will all have separate concepts, right? They all have a separate concept ID in the concept table. These are the branded drug component with Coumadin and Jantoven. And it can be, it can be given in different forms, so as an oral product, as a pill, or as an injectable product. So RxNav is a really nice resource for you to be able to explore drugs. You could of course also look at Athena. The only thing to watch out for within Athena is if your source codes are GPI or multi-lex, which actually are proprietary codes. These you may not find in Athena. You would need to provide the fact that you have, you would need to show that you have the license, and then you can actually get the mapping. But you won't find it, freely. Okay, so this is what the drug hierarchy looks like. Everything below this line, these are all your source codes. It could be SEAL, NDC, GPI. This is European. There's a Belgian product. There are Australian products in here. Oxmis is also from the UK. And they all map to RxNorm and RxNorm extension. As I mentioned before, RxNorm extension is the extension for RxNorm created by the OMOP vocabulary team, specifically to absorb all the non-US drugs. So you have standard concepts for drug products, for drug ingredients, and for drug, I forget, see what this is, for drug classifications. So all three will have concepts. And so let's actually see if we can explore all of this from our notebook. So I'm gonna get to where we ended last time. I think the last video ended with asking you guys to do these exercises, search for these in Athena. Let's find the active. So here we are actually looking for the ingredient, the active compound warfarin by keyword. So we're just doing a select star where the concept name is warfarin. Excuse me. It's a good idea to actually say lower concept name, because as you will find that the way it's put into the database, it's all over the place, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So go ahead and run this query. Just gonna go here and see, okay. All right, so here you see warfarin. It's only because we said, hey, make it lower concept name that we got all of these, because you can see in the database, sometimes W is capital, sometimes the entire word is capital, sometimes the entire word is all lowercase. So in order to be able to get them all, you should make them all lower or all upper. But here you can see, these are all the concept IDs for warfarin in the OMOP concept table. As you can see, not all of them are standard. In fact, most of them are not standard. The standard ones are just a couple. The domain is drug for the most part, but some places it is measured value, and in the measured value you can see that the vocabulary is LOINC, so that's actually a lab value typically. You can see which vocabulary it's coming from. So it's coming from very many different vocabularies. There's SNOMED, there's MESH, there's NDFRT, there's RxNorm, but then there's also, hemo-oncology, GGR, and so on. And then you can see the concept class ID, that it's component, it's a pharma preparation, it could be an ingredient, and so on, and the standard concept. Not all of them are standard concepts. This is a standard LOINC concept, standard measured value concept, and then this is the standard RxNorm. This is the standard concept for warfarin in OMOP. So that's the standard. So when we asked for, hey, what is find the active compound warfarin by keyword, the standard concept ID for that is 1310149, right? Because that's the one that is standard. Okay, so dabigatran was the other drug that we were exploring. So go ahead and look for dabigatran in the same way. And here you can see again, same deal, dabigatran can be spelled multiple different ways, all uppercase, just the first alphabet is uppercase, and so on. Again, it can be either a measurement, a measured value, so it's a loink, or it's a drug. And then there are only some that are standard, and here, this is the one that we're looking for in this query is this. This is dabigatran, it's a drug, it's from RxNorm, and it's a standard concept, and the concept class ID is ingredient. So that's what we're looking for. We're also going to just look for clopidogrel. Clopidogrel is another antithrombotic, and we think that might be more of that in the Stanford dataset. So this is another way you may be asked, or you may be looking for a particular drug. So find the drug product containing clopidogrel. But now I want the NDC code, the Bristol Myers Squibbs, and this particular Plavix 75 milligram capsules. So let's look for that, because here what we're going to say is the NDC code is this, so that's the source code, so that's what I'm going to search with. That's what I'm going to query for, where the concept code is that. So go ahead and run that cell. So here you can see that this is clopidogrel 75 milligram oral tablet. Plavix is the brand name. It's a drug. It's an NDC. It's an NDC code, and it is not a standard concept. So in order to find the standard concept ID for clopidogrel, we're going to have to do what we had done with with the atrial fibrillation and the others, right? We found this concept ID, and then now we look in the concept relationship table for what this maps to, right? So we're looking in the concept relationship table, where concept ID 1 is this, and the relationship ID is maps to. Okay, so here you can see that the concept ID that it maps to is 1322185. So 1322185 is probably the standard concept, but let's just confirm. So if we can go ahead and just look for that concept ID in the concept table. And there you can see it is the branded drug clopidogrel 75 milligram oral tablet. That concept ID 1322185, and it is a standard concept. So what if you wanted to find the clopidogrel? So here we looked for a very specific clopidogrel drug product. What if you wanted to find the clopidogrel as an ingredient or as an ancestor of drug products? So what we're doing here is we're going to say, we're going to find them all. So, but what we're going to be looking for is the ingredients. So like right here, remember how in the concept class ID, you have sort of different concept class IDs. In here, I would be looking for the word ingredient. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, okay, let's, I want all the ancestors of clopidogrel. So what all subsumes clopidogrel? So of course, when I do it in the descendant concept ID table, I have to always use the standard concept. This is the standard concept for clopidogrel. So that's what I'm going to look for. And I'm also going to specify that the concept class ID should be ingredient. And I wanted to give me all the maximum levels of separation. And I'm saying that the descendant is clopidogrel 75 milligrams. All the others are what are going to be its parents. So let's go ahead and run that. Okay, so because I had specified concept class ID is equal to ingredient, I only got one. And you can see that the concept name is clopidogrel. The maximum levels of separation are 3. And that is a sort of an umbrella term that will include clopidogrel 75 milligram oral tablets, right? So if I run this without this particular requirement. Let's see what happens. There. So now I basically get all the ancestors, right? I get all the ancestors. These 3 dots basically just mean there are a whole bunch of more rows. You can see I have 219 rows, but now I've got all the ancestors. I wanted to make it more specific. I only wanted the ingredient, and so that's why I specified where the concept class ID is ingredient. So let me go ahead and change that again. Make sure it runs. Okay, perfect. What about the descendants of other drug products containing warfarin, clopidogrel, dabigatran? So I could actually go ahead and look in that ancestor list, and I found that, hey, there is a more umbrella ancestor that I can find that actually includes all of these. That is, it's basically the class of antithrombotics, and so I just picked an ancestor concept ID, which I got from that list from earlier, and if I go ahead and run that, you can see that oh, I'm sorry, my bad. That's the next one. This is checking the descendants of each of these drugs. So here we've said, hey, make the ancestor 457753772, which is dabigatran, and give me all its descendants. So this is dabigatran. This is the concept ID that I'm searching for, and all its descendants. And then these are the levels of separation of descendants. So as you can see, this is dabigatran, the very general term dabigatran, and then this is dabigatran in all its specific forms, oral, injectable, the different dosages, and so on. Similarly, you could actually run the same query for warfarin, which has this standard concept ID, and then or clopidogrel or dabigatran, which is this this concept ID. So I think I've run it for clopidogrel here. Okay. How would you find ingredient descendants of a drug class of, say, anticoagulants? So I can go in and just like I found these are descendants in the earlier one, I showed you how you could get the ancestors. If I pick an ancestor and then I say, hey, give me all the descendants of the drug class of anticoagulants, I would expect that if dabigatran, clopidogrel, and warfarin are all anticoagulants, then they should show up in that drug class hierarchy as well. So let's see if they really do that. So we're going with this standard concept ID, which again, you can use Athena to find it. Or you could use the SQL table. Use SQL and use this concept table. But that's the standard concept ID for ATC antithrombotic agents. So we expect this to be the umbrella term, and we're expecting that if that's the ancestor in the list of descendants, I'm going to find all those other 3 drugs. So let's see if we do that. So you can see there are so many different kinds of antithrombotic coagulants, antithrombotic agents, or so many different kinds of drugs. And remember, we are searching specifically for the ingredient class. So let's see, in this ingredient class, yes. So I see warfarin as in the ingredient class. I see clopidogrel in the ingredient class. I don't know if I'm going to see dabigatran in here. Let's see. Who is it? Okay, and here is dabigatran. So here is dabigatran. Okay, so here are just some quick exercises for you to do just to get familiar with using this. You could use SQL or you could use Athena. Find the standard concept ID for metformin, for telazomide, and for telmisaratan. Here are a few more. So the classification is different, which is why these look different and have been put in a separate section. Go ahead and try and find the standard concept IDs for these. And what you will find is for this particular concept, this one particular source code, A10BD14, you won't find a single concept ID because it's actually a drug cocktail, and sometimes for these drug cocktails you don't have a standard concept. In fact, in the next video I'm going to show you how would you search for people who have taken a drug which, if this drug had a specific brand name, then yes, you could probably find it and you could find the standard concept ID. But if it does not, then sometimes what you may have to do is you need to find people who used metformin and who used repiglinide at the same time, and then use that intersection. That's how you would get people who use both the drugs at the same time. But we'll show you that in the next video. The next video is mostly going to be just focused on just questions that we've had during office hours from our users, real questions that people have had, when they're trying to create cohorts of people trying to, find people with certain drugs or certain other specifications. So we'll walk through that in the next video. See you guys next time.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.